All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Free Friday Coaching Call. This is Casey Council Jiha. I am your host for today, as I am on all of the Fridays that we do this, unless for some reason I'm traveling. So I want to welcome everybody to the call. We do this call the first and third Fridays of the month, and the origin of this call came from all of the years that my late husband, Rick Jiha, was in the real estate industry, helping people succeed in their businesses and in their lives. And he always was there to offer a helping hand, both from a space of mindset and skill set. And so he created these calls several years ago to really be a place for people that wanted to continue to learn and grow and become better, the best version of themselves in business and in life, to be able to do that. And so today, what this conversation looks like is having people that have really done something special in the industry, are making an impact, and are here to pass that on, pay it forward in the context of contribution in the way that he did for so many years. So I'm grateful that we've kept this call going for you that jump on and listen, because you're a community of people that are committed to continuing to take it to the next level. So as we get into the conversation for today, and some of you, I don't know, some of you may or may not know, because I don't talk about it a lot, because we always talked about Rick being in real estate. However, I got my license at the end of 2004 and sold real estate starting in 2005 to 2009. And so I understand what it means to be an agent, and I understand what it takes to create success as an agent in the industry. And I have a passion for people that get into our industry, because I haven't met anybody that gets into real estate that doesn't want to create some kind of freedom for themselves. And most of us realize a hot minute into it that real estate doesn't necessarily have freedom, it has flexibility. And there are ways, though, to create freedom in real estate, and we're going to definitely jump into some of those today. And so the person that I'm joined with on the call today is somebody that I have such a big space for in my heart. She and I met as a result of my late husband, Rick, and they've known each other for, oh, I think you've known him for longer than I have, because, because he was integral at the time in her career when she decided that she wanted to open up a Keller Williams franchise in Chico. And he was part of helping her do that. And so I know they were in leadership circles together throughout the years and had an opportunity to create an incredible impact. She's got close to 20 years in the business, and she's still actively selling and coaching and training, and really making an incredible dent in the space of wealth creation and freedom for agents in the industry, because those two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. But more than that, she's a good friend of mine. I love her dearly, and I'm really, really grateful that we get to do life and business together. So thank you for being with us today, Erica.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure. And I always love to have an opportunity to sit down and talk to you, and then talk to anybody about, kind of what we're doing, what we're, kind of our cause and our mission. And yeah, it's just exciting. Glad to be here. And I'm grateful for Rick bringing us together. He helped me grow our market center and launch our market center. And then we've been dear friends ever since. So it's been an awesome journey.
And I love that. I love that. Well, let's just, for everybody that might just be meeting you or hearing your story for the first time, what was it that had you get into real estate?
I was getting my teaching credential and couldn't get a teaching job, honestly. And both my parents have been realtors for 25 years. At that time, I mean, I'm probably they're going on way longer than that now. But I just watched them and I'm like, hey, this can't be that bad. They don't work that hard. It doesn't seem like they work that hard, and they make good money. So sure, why don't I do that? So literally, that's kind of how I started in 2003. There wasn't a lot of teaching jobs at that point, and it was like, all right, let's try this. And so I jumped into real estate in Chico, and within the first year, made top 10 in our company, and kind of took off from there, honestly.
I
So.
love that. Yeah, I know. Isn't it interesting, the perspective that we have as kids about what our parents do? And then if we choose the same career paths and we figure it out, and it's like, wow, I had no idea.
Right. Exactly. Yes, for sure. My kids both are like, we'll never be realtors. I'm like, it's not that bad of a gig. If you watch what we've done, it's actually pretty cool. So
Yeah. Well, and there's such a connection, right? Because in the field that you were looking to go into, which is teaching, there's so much teaching that happens in the context of real estate as well, right? There's this education of clients. If you're working in leadership, there's this education of agents. And so the skill set really is transferable. And that's what, for people that may be on, that jump on these calls, there's people that are brand new in real estate and there's people that are seasoned in real estate, and if they've done something, or if anybody on the call has done something before now coming to this conversation, you've developed and built a skill set. And so when you realize that the skill sets that you built in other places are transferable here, and then you learn the lingo and you learn the actual everything associated with real estate, it can make it easier because it's not so foreign.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, this is a relationship business, and it's about people, right?
Yeah.
So you got into real estate for that reason, and obviously you did well. Um, why open a franchise?
At the time in Chico, there was only a couple of brokerages. I mean, we're a town of about 100,000 people. It's a college town. And to be perfectly honest, my dad he was one of the brokers in Roseville, California, and he was managing brokers with Wayne Hall for many years. And so if you don't know the late Wayne Hall, he launched all of the market centers in like the Sacramento area. And so my dad kind of said, "Hey, is there a Keller Williams in Chico?" And I'm like, "What's Keller Williams?" And so I looked into it, and then I was like, I'm just going to go start a market center because Coldwell Banker was terrible at the time. So it was like there was no education. It was very old school. And I was like, I was the youngest there. I was 25 and was like, let's go do something different. Let's go, So, when you don't know what you don't know and you just are ambitious and you've got that young spirit and you're like, what could go wrong? Like, we're just going to go start a brokerage. It's going to be awesome. And so I started up with my business partner at the time, Brewster Beatty, and we launched it. And within, gosh, I think about 3 years, we were number one in our whole, like literally from like Chico all the way to the Northern California border. So it was a super fun ride to learn how to do that and just the energy and everything that goes into building something like that. So
Yeah. And I have your stuff up in front of me, which is, it's hard to share these things about yourself because it could sometimes be embarrassing, but uh, to take ownership of just how amazing that you guys did in that space. Uh, Owners that had over 1,400 units, 450 million in volume, and 10.8 million in revenue, and your office being number one in all categories with over 25% of market share in the local market, which, I mean, that's impressive, right? And for anybody that's an individual agent that is selling real estate on your own and wanting to expand how much you actually sell, like that is one animal. And then moving into a leadership context and building something like that is an entirely different animal, as you know, Erica, right? But what I love about you is that your passion is and has been with the agents. And
um,
how do we help agents grow if they want to grow and scale teams, understand how to use systems to do that and models to build leverage, so that really at the end of the day, like if anybody's been in real estate for more than a hot minute, it's may have had an experience where it felt like it was all consuming, like it has consumed you. And whether that is the client that's calling at 10 o'clock at night, or if you have a team or an organization that you're building, all of the things that go with that. And at the end of the day, why most of us get into the business is for a quality of life and lifestyle. And yet that eludes and evades so many people. And so many people never create that. I mean, we not joke, but it's serious. I've never been to a retirement party for a realtor. They work until they die. And for some people, that is very few people, that's because it's their passion and they just love doing it. For the majority of people, it's because they're not in a position to stop. And that's because of, a multitude of things. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be that way. And so, what I love about you and what you're doing, and really what you are focused on today, is helping to create a different reality for agents that really want to make a different reality for themselves. So I know a few years ago you made a change, and for somebody that hasn't gone through that progression, it may look like you were at the top of the food chain, so to speak, because here you are running this, great office, and yet you took a strong pivot in another direction. Yeah, what has it been, 4 years now?
I think we're at 4 years. Yeah, this
Yeah,
August,
4 years.
4 years.
So, talk about that, because I think it's so important for people to understand, like, there's a couple of things, right? It's you as a kid looking at your parents, what they do, and the illusion of what that means versus what it actually means, right? Then there could be people on the call here today that'd be like, "Man, I would love to, like, grow a team or maybe open a brokerage or an office because I'll have more leverage and, better lifestyle and all the things that come with that." And then there's the illusion of that, and there's then what it actually means, and that those two things may not be mutually exclusive either. And yet, this we just want to have a frank conversation about it. So you, at the seeming top of the mountain, make a career pivot that was pretty sharp, and for people that were in your space would have been like, why? So talk about that.
Yeah, so I think, once I got into real estate in 2003, I left in 2006 to open KW. And so I was in that space as a team leader and an operating principal for about 15 years. And then it got to that point where there was nowhere else for me to grow to, right? Like I knew I didn't want to be a regional director. I knew I didn't want to do anything else. And I just wasn't feeling fulfilled anymore. It was like, I realized there's some things I think you need to realize about yourself. And as you mature and as you go through different, struggles, highs, lows, whatever it is that you find in this space, it's so important to know, like, I know I'm a builder. Like, I'm a builder, I'm not a sustainer, right? And so as I look at that, I'm like, I'm good at building, but like to keep it going, I need a really good team of people around me. And at that time, when I made the pivot of going from, yeah, we were number one still, everything was going really good, but I wasn't excited anymore. Like, I wasn't excited about coming to work. There was nowhere else really for me to go. I didn't want to go grow other offices. It was just a lot of energy. And so when I looked at this model, I mean, literally it was one day I was like, where are all my friends on a yacht in Cabo? I want to be on a yacht in Cabo. That looks fun. It was literally, that's how I ended up. I mean, Brent had been up here like 5 times to talk to me, and but then I called Rick and I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? Like, what are you guys doing? Everybody I know is going over to EXP. And so it was so fun. They're like, get over here, get on the yacht with us, and I'm like, okay, let's go. And I think I just had, there was so much that I needed something new and exciting, and that kind of pushed that passion back out of me again to grow again with more people and do something different. And this model was when I really dug into it, it took me a long time. I mean, literally probably took me 3 years to make the move to come over. Um, and once I made that decision, it was like I had this freedom of like, oh, I get to choose again and build my business again the way that I want to build my business. And that was such an eye opener for me, because in the model that I was in, it was like, this is the one way to do it, and this is the only way to do it. And you couldn't think outside the box. And here I'd go to these events. I'm like, everyone's doing it a different way, and they're all successful. This is amazing, and the more people that I talked to, it was just fun and just such good energy behind all of that. So that was I mean, I can't tell you how many people called me and was like, what, like, same thing, like, what are you doing? Like, like, what is happening? Like, what, tell me more about this, so it's been such a cool opportunity to just kind of sit in your own space of what you need and where the platform you need to feel successful. And this platform offers all of that for me and what I'm looking to do in my life, and so I think that was such a huge piece of it. And honestly, just the connections and the rooms that I was able to get into inside of this, in this ecosystem here at EXP, that was kind of locked off for certain people or certain demographics or whatever, that Chico never would have afforded me because of the size of my market center, because we just weren't big enough, if that makes sense. So it's been so fun to get in these other rooms and just have different conversations that never would have happened. And they happen all the time because of this virtual experience, which is, I mean, you guys are getting to do this. You're all over the country, right? We'd never be talking if I was just isolated in Chico. And that's, I think, such a huge, powerful piece of all of this.
Yeah. And as you were describing all of that, it's the power of collaboration, right? And in an environment. There's that book by Benjamin Hardy, Willpower Doesn't Work.
Mhm.
And he talks about the power of environment and how what people will create and achieve is dependent on the environments that they're in, right? So you're in a little, I mean, you were great in the environment that you're in Chico. However, you were, a really big fish in a pond that wasn't that big. And so now you've got a national, international exposure to people all collaborating and working together in the space of real estate that is, it's fun. So let's go back to this idea about, an agent actually creating wealth for themselves in this business and in this industry. And so we've gone, kind of full scale of your story and, the picture of that. And what I'm hoping that people that are on the call are getting from that is that number one, to continue the importance of continuing to grow and evolve and being around people that are committed to continuing to grow and evolve. I was in a conversation with somebody, actually, it was last year in Cabo on, we weren't on the yacht at that time. We are actually in session. And an incredible agent that's part of our organization and community, just, I'm like, how is it that you are not here? Like, this event is unbelievable, real estate event. And they said, I've been in the business 20 years and I've been to events for, 19 of those, and I'm done with events. I know how to do my business, and that's that. And I was like, wow, such an interesting mindset. And not that that's a wrong mindset. It's just that what that means is there will be no new experiences that happen because that it's now fixed, it's now capped, it's now done, it's going to be what it's going to be. And so this idea of being in a different conversation, being in a different room, and rooms like the opportunity that everybody on the call has to be with you today, with such an expansive firsthand experience, knowledge, and boots on the ground. I mean, I know you're selling real estate today, you have a real estate sales team today, you're building an organization and leading agents and doing what you were doing, just doing it more, with the ability to actually scale and have a bigger reach and be in those kind of rooms. So let's dial it back all the way to this idea of, okay, I'm an individual agent in real estate. It's 2025. I've got some goals set, 2024 and everything that everybody experienced or was saying about 2024's market is gone. Here we are in 2025. How do I really move the needle forward in my business and in my life? Like, what do I need to check and make sure that I've got lined up and dialed in, that I'm on the right path?
For sure. I think the biggest piece that I would be looking at, when I do a lot of individual coaching with agents all over the country, and the first thing I always start with is, and some of you may or may not have done this, just called a wheel of life. And it's just kind of like identifying where you are, right? Like, where am I in all of the pieces of my life? Because it's not going to do us any good to go and, coach you to say, if I'm Lori's coach and I'm like, hey, like, how many calls did you make today? How many dials did you make? How many contacts did you make? If their life is falling apart on the other side, right? Like their kids are a mess, or their kids are sick, or all of, life just happens to all of us, right? So when I look at coaching someone, I think it's taking the time to step back at your own life and really identify, how do we make, we're never going to have this, everything's going to be a 10. But if we've got something that's working really well, like we're so hyper focused on our business and that our personal life is completely, gone, well, then that's not going to help us have a balanced life, right? So we've got to take that step back and really look at, what do I actually want? And I think that's probably after, 15 years of coaching, literally thousands of agents, is asking them. So many agents don't have a clue what they actually want. They know what they don't want. They're really clear on what they don't want, but they have such a hard time thinking about what they do want. And when we set goals, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people like, well, tell me more about why that's your goal. And they're like, just feel like I need to do 20% more than I did last year. And I'm like, why? Well, I don't know. I'm supposed to do better. I'm supposed to do more, right? I don't know. Says who, right? I mean, there's this conditioning that's been happening in our industry where we just are supposed to keep increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. Well, a lot of times what happens when we do that is our income and our expenses go up at the exact same time. So our net is actually pretty much the same. Even though we're working harder, Now we got to go spend 30 or 40, $50,000 to get an assistant, right? So now I got to go sell 10 more houses to go do that. So it's looking at what do you want in your business, in your life, and tying your personal goals to your business goals. And I think that's a disconnect that most agents don't do. They throw the dart on the wall. They have no idea what their personal expenses are. If a check comes in, they spend it, they put their credit card. Most of them are never paying attention to any of their money. And one of my big passions, and it comes back from like, I started my office, my brokerage in 2006. If any of you have been in the industry, 2007 was like a little bit rough and all the way on. And I will say that from, the time that I started that office until the time I left it 15 years later, there was only 2 months we were not profitable. And why I say that is because it's so important to know what your financial, picture looks like. Because it's so easy to go, I'll just go sell another house. Like that's always the mindset. Like my ex-husband used to always be like, well, we'll just go sell another house. Yeah, we can. And we can all go sell another house, but is that going to get us to what we actually want? So going through that experience in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 was rough. I mean, it was rough financially. And I swore to myself I would never put myself in that position again, where I didn't know I was making a whole bunch of money and doing really well and had no idea where I was spending it. I'd go to the tax guy and I'd be like, I don't know, am I going to owe 40 grand or am I going to get 30 grand back? I don't know. Didn't have a clue. So when you're looking at your goals coming into this year, most of my agents, even we just had a team meeting for our organization, and I had them in December write down what just write themselves a letter for the first 3 months of what they wanted to accomplish. So I asked them this month when we had our meeting, I said, do you guys even remember what you wrote down? And they're like, nope, I don't remember. So the key here, when I look at, if you pull that business plan that you created off the shelf, you created it in October, November, you pull that off the shelf and you really take a look at it and go, how committed am I actually to this if I don't know what my goals are? Like that. You should know what your goals are every single day. You should be looking at your goals. And it's not just your business goals, it's your personal goals, it's your health goals, it's your spiritual goals, it's your, friends and family, it's your recreation and fun. It's all those pieces of what is going to give you the life with intention, really living your life with intention to design the life you want. And I say that because it's so important. We take for granted that we actually, as agents, as independent contractors, as entrepreneurs, we have the complete ownership of what we want our life to look like. However, we make it so that we're relying on the agents or we're relying on the clients or something like that to give us what we want. We are actually in complete ownership of it, and it's the decisions that we make based to really get us to figure out what we want in our life and how we want to show up. Because nobody's going to fire you if you don't show up to work today.
Yeah, that is true. And then there's that flip question to that, right? Which is, would you hire you?
Mhm.
And that's a tough question sometimes to say yes to. I mean, I've looked up and be like, well, today, no, I wouldn't hire me.
Right.
Other days, yeah, for sure, right?
Yep.
So I love that you're bringing this up, and it's an awareness piece, right? Because it's really easy to default to what I call a survival context in the brain. And we were talking about this on a call earlier in the week of that. It was Wednesday. It was like 2 days ago. It feels like 5 days ago. But we were talking about that, in a survival context, we'll always survive, right? I'm always going to make sure that I make enough money so that I can eat and that I have a roof over my head. And I will always survive. And that's true for most people. But this idea of thriving is a totally different one. And so there's a mindset that I think a lot that can happen a lot, or that can become a default mindset. Well, is if I just go sell enough real estate and I just generate, enough money, everything else will work itself out because I need to make the money to make the things happen. And that that formula doesn't work out ever for someone. And anyone that is walked that path and realized it may know it, somebody that's newer may not, right? Again, it's that illusion of not really knowing. and be romanticizing, oh, I'm in real estate. Everybody that's not in real estate, when they think about real estate, it's like, oh man, those guys have it easy. They go make huge commission checks for, just getting people into things that they want, or into the next thing that they want when it comes to their housing. And I really have no idea what that looks like. So I love that you're, bringing awareness to this space of, it's that old Mark Twain quote, which is, I can teach anybody to get what it is that they want. I just can't find anybody who knows what they want, right? And so taking the time to get clear on that and really ask, and then there's this whole other layer of, sometimes those things are going to be influenced by family and customs and culture and what everybody else may want. Particularly this happens in a space of agents that want to be agents because they want to raise families, and then the guilt of working when it comes, right down to it. So there's so many different things in this like fabric that go together. So step one is to look at, that wheel of life and get really clear on how those things play together, and daily knowing what those goals are, more importantly, why you're working towards those things and what's the bigger picture that each one is serving.
Mhm.
And then what?
Um, and then really, I think the biggest piece is not trying to do it all at once, right? Because like when I do the Wheel of Life exercise, I'm like, tell me where you are, right? Because where we kind of forget sometimes is that we can't look backwards. There's a reason there's like in your car, you've got this huge front windshield, and then you've got this tiny little mirror that's showing you what's going on back there, because you can't change what's going on back there. You've got to look at where you are and where you're going, right? And in the space of, where I really love to focus is, on the wealth building side of it, and on the, really paying attention and having good financial awareness behind where your money's going and getting clear with your money. But we're just like, so many people that I talk to go, oh gosh, I'm 55, I'm not making any money. I can't even think about building wealth. I'm like, you're right, because you're right here, right now. And you've got all this baggage that you're bringing with you. You've got like the clunky cans that you're bringing behind you in the car that are like, nope, nope, I'm never going to be able to do this, because we don't stop and take that time to really sit there and go, okay, what is it that I want? Right? Like, what is it I want? I've known so many people that in 5 years, they've been able to amass the same amount of wealth that it took somebody 30 years to make. And it doesn't matter where you are, you just have today to start paying attention to getting really clear with your business, getting really clear with why do you need to make a certain amount of money, not just to feed your family, and not just to bring home a certain amount of money to your home, but like, what does it look like to actually be able to retire, or to actually be able to, get really clear on, I want to pay my house off by the time I'm in the next 15 years. I want to have passive income. Everyone's got different goals, and they say them, but they don't actually put that plan together and just do the math. It's just a math equation on the way backwards to go, okay, instead of throwing the dart at the wall when you say, I need to go sell 20 houses, let's get clear with your business budget. Let's get clear with your personal budget. Let's get clear with, what is that trip? You want to take that trip to Disneyland with your family? Great. What's that going to cost? $10,000. Put that on give your goals an actual financial number next to them, and break that down into, I need to do this in 5 years. So what do I need to put away this year to go do that? And that's just this big disconnect that so many agents do, and they just keep going. Every year is like a new year, and they're like, oh yeah, I really need to set that up. I really need to think about that. And they don't take that time because they get busy, right? And every day, I mean, Casey, you and I both know, you're going to pay attention to the things that, like what you focus on expands, right? Like you've got to, if you're not paying attention to it, it's not going to expand. The clearer that you can get on focusing on this stuff. And that was kind of my story, was that it was rough in those years. And in 2014, I actually got divorced. And when I walked away from that, I had $40,000, and I was like, what in the world am I doing? I'm 38 years old, and my net worth is $40,000. Like, this is insane. What happened? We were having a good time, spent a lot of money, a lot of things. And then you get into a situation like that where you go, oh gosh. And at that moment, I was like, never again, never, ever again am I doing this. And so from that moment to now, I mean, the amount of net worth we have is probably, 100 times what that is, because I looked at that every single week and it's at times every single day and paid attention to what I wanted. So it's just such an important piece as you look at where are you today and where do you want to be and why? Why is that important?
Yeah. So one of the hardest parts that, one of the hardest parts I think for people is to be honest about where I'm at today, particularly if I don't like where I'm at today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I don't know about everybody else on this call. However, I know I'm harder on myself than anybody else will ever be hard on me, right? And in this idea of where I'm at now versus where I thought I'd be, I mean, I didn't think I'd be 49 and widowed, but what am I going to do about that? Right? That's what happened. And so I'm still here and there's still a life to live, right? And everybody's got these things. You went through a divorce, there's things that are happening all around us every day that are unexpected things. And then when we look up and get really clear and honest, like sometimes it's hard to be clear and honest just about that first part of, okay, here's my point A. But that's the most powerful part is taking responsibility, right? You took responsibility and you're like, oh, I'm, 38 years old and I've got a net worth of $40,000. Okay, we had a lot of fun and great, except for this is not going to be what my future looks like.
Right.
And so the power of taking ownership of where your point A is for everybody on the call and not trying to like dress it up and make it a turd Sunday, where it's really just a pile of poo and you'd be like, oh, I got some whipped cream and I threw a banana on it. And it's not that bad. Right? No, like it's a pile of poo. That's where we're at. That's my point A. Okay. Okay, great. Now what? So that, that first piece and then giving, and when we're talking, I mean, just even this context, I'm thinking about what you're saying about wealth creation. If somebody has survived their entire life, it's a whole different track to actually create wealth, right? And there is a lot of people that are incredible survivors, incredible at surviving tough situations, tough things in life, and surviving financially versus ever really thriving and creating wealth, which is a whole different skill set and mindset that goes with that, right? So
Yeah.
you've got this, as simple as it sounds, it's actually that's where the most power is in the simplicity, right? Of what you mentioned, like be clear about where you're at, where do you want to go, and then focus on it every day, and energy and attention on it.
Yeah.
So in a practical steps application, let's say somebody's doing that, and how how do you actually create wealth in real estate?
I will say I think everybody gets discouraged because they want the quick and easy, and creating wealth takes time, right? I always like kind of I'm a visual person, so like I allude it to like a hockey stick, like it's like you're just grinding. It's kind of the same thing with like lead gen or anything. You're just grinding and you're putting your money away, you're getting really clear with your goals, and then all of a sudden one day it just kind of like starts going up, and you're like, it's that compounding factor. So the first thing, from a practical standpoint, what I have all of my clients do is again, we got to figure out where we want to go and in what time frame. That's number one, right? Because so many of us think that we have all this time, and one day we wake up and we're like, oh, we're 50, or oh, we're 60, or oh, we're 70, and all of a sudden it just kind of hits us, and we're like, now what? I thought I had all this time. So getting really clear with what you want in what time frame. And I like to look at like a horizon vision, I call it. And that's kind of be like, hey, here's our 15, 20-year plan. Like, yeah, I'd like to, ours is I'd like to have $25,000 a month in passive income, by the time I'm 55. Like, that's my goal. Like, I'm really clear with that. That's overwhelming when I looked at it 10 years ago, right? Because I'm like, how am I going to do that? That's one of the attractions I had to EXP. I was like, oh, like there's an easy one, I've got some agent attraction. I got some things that was one of my lanes, right? There's a cool lane that's right there in front of you that all of you have access to that is phenomenal. But then I was also like, I want, real estate in my portfolio. I have syndications in my portfolio. I have stocks in my portfolio. So I have these different lanes. And it's really about creating what you want in what timeline. So we have the horizon vision, and then you have like the this year vision, and then you kind of have like, I do 90-day sprints, right? Because that works for my brain. You've got to figure out what's going to work for your risk tolerance, for your, you know, whatever your goal is. If you're doing it with a partner, if you're doing it by yourself, whatever that looks like, but get clear on what you want in what time frame, and then work some of that math backwards to just say, okay, if this is going to be, you know, if this is what I want, what has to be true? What habits have to change? You know, what does my business have to look like? It's not even a choice. It's not like I'd like it to look like this. It's a, here's what has to happen in my business. And once you do that and you get clarity on what you want in what time frame, you can start to see that as you back the steps out, they're really tangible. And again, it's keeping it super, super simple, right? And so that's really, you know, your next step is just figuring out, like I have our clients do like net worth sheets so that they actually know, you know, sometimes they have this idea of what things are worth or what their net worth is. And then, I mean, I had a client the other day, so she thought it was like 3.5 million was her net worth, and it was 13.2 million. She was, I'm like, dude, do I get a raise? We just got you $8 million. Like, this is amazing. But it was, I know that's kind of an anomaly, but her husband's a contractor and they own a bunch of real estate, and she just didn't, you know, had not been paying attention to it. And once you start paying attention to some of this stuff, it's amazing the awareness and the clarity that you have to make it really feel like, oh, I can do this. This is achievable. And that's the magic right there, because it doesn't feel like this looming thing that's out there that we'll never accomplish.
I love the definition. I think it's Earl Nightingale's definition of success is that success is forward progress towards worthy goals. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You know, individually deem what is worthy, right? And it's that forward progress. And it's
Mhm.
the how many by when. And then, you know, the attention and intention on it and a really clear plan and moving the needle forward every day. And we mentioned something really important about 90-day sprints is I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I've definitely had the experience where 90 days went by and I'm like, what actually happened in the last 90 days? I feel like I was so busy. But where did I actually move the needle forward on things? And then I've had other 90 days where it's like, okay, locked and loaded. I'm going into a 90-day sprint and it's the how many by when in the 90. It's the all the unexpecteds that come up during that time. And then it's just massive momentum and growth that can also happen in the same 90-day period. And interestingly enough, based on behavioral styles, the majority of people over 70% of people are going to naturally perform better in 90-day sprints than they are in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year kind of plans. And so if you need to have the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, but focus on the 90 days to really get stuff done and consistently be able to move things forward. Okay,
Yeah.
so what's next after that?
Well, I think the next piece is, I mean, once you start working through that, because I mean, you got to remember that everything's going to take time, right? So, I mean, we've developed a product that it's just a group coaching product that is kind of a self-paced where it's like you're looking at your business budget, you're understanding your net worth, you're doing these things. So you've got a good gauge of where you are, right? So then once you start really identifying, I mean, I plug that into your business and then look at what does my business goals need to be, get clarity behind all of that. And then from there, once we go to that next step, it's all about then you get to start creating the wealth, right? Because again, I mean, how many of you right now have, I mean, just kind of like put it in the chat, like how many of you know what your tax obligation is going to be this year? Like just say yes or not a clue, or I'm really clear on this. So we got one yes. I love it.
How
No,
would someone know that, Erica?
how would someone know that? Someone would know that because they've gone through and maybe worked with a CPA or a financial planner, and they actually do one of the mistakes, I won't say mistakes, one of the things that, and because I did it for years, was I went in, I just paid my quarterly taxes, again, not paying attention to maybe last year I made 250 and this year I'm making 350, and you know, that's what my net looks like. And all of a sudden I'd have this huge tax bill and I'd be like, oh God, that sucks. Because I'd meet with my tax planner like once a year. So one of the big shifts that we made is really sitting down and looking not with just a CPA, but actually finding a tax strategist. And one of the most important pieces, this is kind of where I spent a lot of the last few years, because I absolutely love this, is that, we'd go to classes and they'd say, oh, you can write off your mileage and you can write off these things. And I was like, there's other people that are writing off a ton more things, like what's going on here? So we actually invested in a tax strategist, and they're also in a CPA firm. They do our bookkeeping and everything, but we meet with them 4 times a year. So we know what we need to do now as a real estate professional, because there are so many tax benefits to being a real estate professional. And looking at how could we be strategic about not paying, and I don't want to say not paying taxes, but getting our tax liability to zero. So for the last 3 years, we have not paid a dime in taxes. And there's some magic to that because we paid attention. We did the work up front. I know exactly what our budget looks like. We live pretty frugally, and we still have our fun for like our vacations, because I love vacations and all the things, like it's not this big bad budget word, it's like a spending plan. And so when we follow that spending plan, there's all this money left over that half the time I was spending on taxes. So instead of taking that money and spending on taxes, we actually now are buying properties and we're doing things like cost segregation studies, and we're doing different things to reduce, that are all legal, all within the bounds of every bit of tax code. It's just finding the right people that know how to structure this stuff so that you can start to build wealth. Because so many agents go, God, I don't have anything after I pay my taxes and after I, live my life and I pay my business expenses and all that. Once you get clear with your business budget, your personal budget, your excess money, what you're going to do with that, it starts making everything really clear, and that starts giving you that ability to build wealth and really understanding what that looks like. And that's such a game changer for so many people when they start paying attention to this. So, I start looking at that and going, that's one of the big things. I've always been really passionate about helping agents just to get out of the day to day, because I've watched, again, I said both my parents are in real estate. Like my dad's 82, and I mean, he's still doing stuff with real estate. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be that, I don't want to be doing that. And it's not in a bad way, he likes it, but for so many people that I know that are realtors that are in those age ranges, they don't have there's no hope that they're going to be able to retire. There's no, when they look at their net worth, the average net worth of somebody that's at 55 years old right now is right at about $55,000, and it's like, that's crazy to me. And then you get in this real estate space where you go, gosh, there's so many benefits for us as realtors. It's such a gift. And I just scratch my head on, why don't more agents own properties? Like we get the first at bat. I mean, I know you guys have heard all this, but there's so many more reasons than just owning a property. There's so many benefits. And once you learn, how do I not go pay the government, $100,000 in taxes, but how could I structure something so I could be purchasing something that's actually going to become an asset for me, and be, not just go buy a car because my CPA said, why don't you go buy a car? Well, maybe I don't need a car, right? But I went and spent $40,000 on a car because my CPA said, oh, that'll be a good idea to go get a new car. No, like, let's go buy some property. Let's go buy some things that are going to be appreciating assets, or things that we can be writing off, things that we can be doing to actually have the ability to start creating wealth that will give us the ability to actually have more choices. I don't even love the word retirement. It's more like, I just want to have options. If I don't want to go sell real estate when I'm 60, I don't have to. I want options. And that's really where I want us to focus, our energy, is figuring out what you want, what that number looks like, and backing that out to figure out how do I need, what steps do I need to be putting in place to be able to do that in that time frame. You're muted.
Thank you. There's, let's just say, somebody said, I'm a new agent. I'm not sure what I'm going to need for taxes this year. Is there like, I mean, I remember when I was a new agent, I just took 30% of every commission check and I clunked it away. And it was like, just pray that that was going to work out and be enough or okay. And, that worked for a bit.
Mhm.
to do that and make sure that that was handled first
Yep.
in order, like, so that I wasn't having to worry about that. But what would you say to somebody that's like a brand new agent right now that doesn't know how much business they're going to do this year? Is there like a standard that you would say, well, do at least this and then you can dial it in down the road?
Sure. What I always suggest to people when they're just starting out, again, keeping it super simple, because we can't go from like, when we're in kindergarten, we're learning some stuff, to like middle school, to high school, to college level, right? So as you kind of keep growing in your financial growth and your financial acumen, you're gonna just be at different levels. So when you're starting out, the most important thing is just keep your business money separate from your personal money. So the most important thing is to go set up, I always encourage my clients to set up 3 different accounts, and I do it at a different bank than what you bank at, so that you can't just, oh, I'm out of money on my personal side, I'm going to move some money over out of my business. So, I look personally, like, have all my money at a different bank for my business, and my personal money is at a separate bank. And over here, I have a business checking account, a business savings account, and then a tax savings account. So the way I structure is every check comes in, it goes straight into my business savings. And then I know how much my business checking needs to have each month to operate, because it's roughly about the same. And then I put in 30% from every single check into tax savings, right? So just the 30% was always my marker. Depends, and you'll learn more about tax rates and all that kind of stuff if you want to, but that was a good gauge to know I always had the money to pay the taxes. And so, once you get up into selling, 200, 300, $400,000 and your GCI is higher, you're going to need to have a clearer look at that. But first year, that's a great way to just take that check, put it into business savings, take 30% right off the top of that, put it in that tax savings, and then know what your business budget looks like and pay it monthly and pay yourself monthly. And it's just a cool way to do it. That's easy.
I love what you're talking about in the structure because it's already, we said wealth building takes time, and part of wealth building is delayed gratification. And I remember when I got my first big real estate check and I was like, oh my gosh, I got this big chunk of money and I'm like, I want to buy this and I want to go do this. And it's like, and then I'll catch up, on the next one. And that is such an easy mentality to have because it's an immediate gratification versus a no, I got that big check. However, this percentage of it is what I actually is mine. And all of these other pieces are working for me, right? To really build and create something. And so those are disciplines and mindsets to have in place for wealth creation as you go. And if you just have that system and that structure that you're talking about, you don't have to think about it. Because I think I don't know about in your area, but in our area, I see a lot of agents whose lifestyle is greater than their actual business.
Mhm. Well, and on that topic, like, they get the $30,000 check and then they base their yearly income on what they made that month. Like, and they start living at that. And then like, oh, you didn't get another paycheck for 3 months. So you actually aren't making that per year, but they get in that mindset because it's that whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
So there's one other thing I want to touch on just in the next few minutes and then we'll open it up for questions. And that is this idea, there's a book called Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And you said something important. You said it's not about not paying taxes, it's about having a tax strategy where why wouldn't you want the majority, if not all, of the money that you're generating going to building and wealth creation versus, and there's, when you know the strategies to do that, that are legal, that are intentional, and you understand how to play that game, it's like once you know the rules of the game, you can build your own strategy in it, right? But if you don't know the rules of the game, doesn't matter what strategy you have, you're not going to necessarily win unless it's by a fluke, right? So when we talk about those different aspects to your tax liability was zero
mhm.
because you've got these different lanes and places where your money's going that reduces the tax liability to zero. For somebody that may be a new concept too, because I know you said things like syndications and investing in real estate and like all those in like 3 minutes or less. Can you explain the implications of those as strategies and why those strategies are so effective?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite books I read, because it was mind blowing, because what I realized was that all of the tax codes are actually designed, when you think about your write-offs, they're actually designed because the government wants, they need you, right? Like they need housing. They can't provide all the housing. They need other people to invest in housing. They need other people to invest in businesses and create jobs. So they actually incentivize you with tax breaks, tax credits, all of the things. So once you start reading and learning about the different ways that you can benefit from this, it's just, it opens up this whole other world. It's not like, oh, we're doing something dirty. It's like, oh no, these are actually what they're designed to do. They're saying, thank you, Tracy, for starting a business and maybe employing somebody else. We're going to give you a tax break because of you've got qualified business income. There's all of these things now that they're designed to help you reduce your tax liability, but we don't take the time to pay attention to them. I mean, that's one of my favorite books was The Tax-Free Wealth. And then another one, if you haven't read it, is The Psychology of Money. That's probably my all-time favorite book, because there's such a mindset around money, good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of it's from what you grew up, learning about, thinking about, and how do you shift some of that so that you can get what you want out of the business you are working in right now. The business is designed to create a profit, to create additional opportunities for you. So the tax-free wealth piece is, I didn't really understand it in the beginning, but once you read the book and you start understanding that it's actually there for your benefit, and it's designed by the government for your benefit and for their benefit too, because it's benefiting them, that's when it starts to make a whole lot of sense.
I love that. Love it. So, this, a lot of us get into real estate and we recognize that we're in a sales job, right? We're selling real estate, but building, you're never going to create wealth by selling. The only way you create wealth is by having your money work for you. And that requires building. And so there's a definite different mindset that, there was, I was at a wealth conference and they said, by show of hands, how many of you want to be, millionaires or multimillionaires? And everybody raised their hand. And then by show of hands, how many are you? How many in the audience were? And it was like 1% in the audience that were. And the difference is the mindset that they had around it, and then the structure and the discipline that they had around it. So number one, it was high in their values. And number two, they were willing to create those structures, to create those sprints, to have it be a long term. And they had a mindset of building something. So I think it's really important, just in a managing energy and expectation space, for, us in real estate to go, yeah, I could sell my way to a great living, but I'm not going to create wealth. And I'm not necessarily going to have an exit strategy by selling my way to a great living. And so I've got to change my mindset to, like, if wealth is something that I want to have, experience, create, my mindset's got to be that of building. And building is like you build a building, you've got to have an infrastructure. It's nails and wood and one story on the next, right? And really building it from the bottom up and being intentional about that. So what I'd love to do in our last couple of minutes together is open up the lines. Number one, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. While we open up the lines for questions, if you want to put your contact information in the chat for people to get a hold of you that may want to participate in the free group coaching that you offer on this whole financial wealth building strategy, or any of the other resources that you have, go ahead and put that in the chat, and then we'll just open it up for any last minute questions.
Yep.
I can see the wheels turning. Just I don't see the.
I have a question. You said that you do two separate account, or two separate banks, and then you said you do savings, operating, kind of, and tax, right? How, like, what percentage do you pay yourself? Is it based on like how much you pull in for the month, or do you have like a set thing that you pay yourself every month? Is it like a certain percentage out of what you put in there?
So the way I structure it, it took me a little time to get here, but the way I structure it is I actually have a personal budget that I treat it like a salary. Like if I'm going to go to work and have a job, like this is what I would get paid. And so that also includes, for me, that includes, I have like almost $1,000 a month for our vacations, and then we have like a place that we go every month. And that's got, that's in that budget. That's all the things that it takes to run it without, I don't like to be constrained. I want to have freedom, but I allow myself, even if I have a $50,000 month or $100,000 month, I still pay myself right at $8,000 a month, right? And that is what has allowed us, like when the market was going crazy and we were selling like crazy, I was still paying myself that while everyone's out buying Louis Vuittons and brand new, Teslas and everything. I was like, I'm driving my little 4Runner. And it was like, but where I am now, like everyone freaked out last year. I'm like, I'm good. I'm totally fine. Like I could not sell another house for 3 years and I will be just fine. So when you think about how you pay yourself, it can't be tied to that. I mean, if you want to give yourself a bonus, because I think everybody's incentivized differently, but it's not, if I make 50 grand, I spend 50 grand. And that's normally what happens, right? Like you're like, oh, everybody, dinner's on me, lobsters, champagne, let's go, because you feel good. And then you're like 2 years later, you're like, anybody got some top ramen? Like, we gotta, yeah, everybody, we're all going Dutch today, and so I don't want to be in this anymore, right? Like that's an awful place to be. And that's where most realtors are. So I actually have a rule for myself that I put 3 months of reserves in my business account. I pay myself a salary. I have payroll set up and everything actually. So that disciplines me with that. So I get payroll and then, that's for another conversation, but that's really how I structured it. In the beginning, I just gave myself a salary, that I moved the money from my business account over to my personal account once a month. And that's how I paid myself. And then I spent my money out of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great question, Cheryl. All right, we have time for one more.
I got a question.
All right, go, Amberly.
Hey, Amberly Gonzalez here out of Orange County, California. I would love to know, how have you gone about finding a tax strategist? Because this is a question that I feel like I've been asking my CPA and making some calls that have just fallen short. So I would love to know if you have a recommendation or how we should go about interviewing tax strategists to help our business.
Sure. The way I actually did it, I read that book, Tax-Free Wealth, and then Tom Wheelwright, he's got a whole program called Wealthability. And so they go in and I mean, you don't have to do this, but I went in and found a tax strategist within his network.
Okay.
Because I wanted somebody, I was doing the same thing. I was like, I'm taking all this stuff from like Bigger Pockets. I'm like, people are doing this, like, and I take it to my CPA. It's like, yeah, we can't really do that. And I'm like, no, like everyone else is doing this. Why, why can I not do this? Like, this is so dumb.
Yeah.
And within like the first, I mean, I'd be happy to connect with you on the one that we use. She's phenomenal. I can put their information in the chat, but they're actually out of Louisiana. And, but we did, we spent probably 4 or 5 hour calls figuring out what we wanted. And then, now we meet once a quarter. And we just strategize on what the plan is so that we can have that retirement number that we were looking for. And we know exactly what every investment needs to be at, what the percentage needs to be, what the return needs to be. So it just keeps it easy for my brain, that I don't have to be like, oh, is that a good idea? Or I don't have ADD on it anymore. I just have a clear plan. But I'd be happy to, I'll put their information in the chat. And, but asking the questions of tax strategist is different from a CPA. But in our situation, they're kind of the same. There's like, when I get on a call, there's 5 people on a call, on their team. And so they've all got their input on what we're doing.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we're at the top of the hour. Laura, thank you for opening the call and putting the resources to the chat. In the chat, you'll find where you can go to get the recording for this call if you want to go back to it. And thank everyone for being on today. Erica, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and what you've learned through the course of business and life. We'll look forward to having you back on. And everyone, make it a great rest of your Friday.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, you guys. Take care.
All. Bye.